Good morning. Good morning, students. Shubhodayam, Shubhdin. Today we shall do the topic on language skills and importance of each of the skills. I have got a slide for you, and here we see that there are two people talking to each other in a different language. Que lis, el quijo, the quiva. So what does that mean? I have used 4 languages, and the definition of the language according to Longman's Dictionary of Applied Linguistics states that language is the system of human communication by means of a structured arrangement of sounds or their written representations to form larger units. Example, morphemes, words and sentences. According to Hadumod Busman in Routledge Dictionary of Language and Linguistics, language is a vehicle for the expression or exchange of thoughts, concepts, knowledge and information, as well as the fixing and transmission of experience and knowledge. It is based on the cognitive processes subject to societal factors and subject to historical change and development. So we have seen that language has its own definition. Now the 4 languages what I have used are a part of the 6,909 languages which are prevalent in the world. In India, we have 22 languages which have been identified by the government of India. Now I have a slide here which talks about how to say hello in the different languages. If you see the first one, it is hola in Spanish, bonjour in France, ciao in Italian, marhaba in Arabic, hello in English, privé, hola, hello and konnichiwa. These are different ways to say hello to people of the world. Now can you see we have here different types of students saying hello to you. They are welcoming you to this class of English language. Now here again I have a globe of people, different people saying hello to you from different parts of the world. Can you see? Hola, Borquino, Ni hao, Swasti, Kemcho, Marhaba. All these are different ways of saying hello to you from the different parts of the world. Now you must be wondering, what is the function of language? Language is to express one's ideas, emotions, desires and feelings. Do you get ideas? Yes, everyone gets ideas. Now can you see this picture? We see that this boy is thinking or having an idea whether to eat the apple or to study. What do you think the child must be having an idea on? Definitely, with the smile on his face, he might be having the idea of eating the apple first and then studying. Now if you see this slide, you find that the idea is generated in the minds of the people. The professor says an idea and every other student around him is thinking of how to communicate to him. Now you can see this picture that this boy has got a thinking hat on. Can you see the hat? It is all wired up. Now he is planning or he is trying to get an idea so that he will be able to write it down in the notebook in front of him. Now the second function of language is to express emotions. If you see the pictures very carefully, we find that the first picture is happy, the second one is surprised, the third picture is angry. Do we all get angry? Yes, we get angry sometimes, but we are happy all the time. Sometimes we are happy when we get a gift suddenly on our birthday. We all get excited when the principal or the teacher says that they take us for a picnic or an excursion outside. We get bored when we listen to classes always, right? Do you agree with me? And the expression you might be having is the same as this girl having on her face. Sad. This is another emotion where your facial expressions go in this manner, but you would want to express them, don't you? Similarly, the next emotion is loving. We all love each other, we all like each other. So therefore, we would want to express our emotions through language. Can I make a sentence for you with happy? I am happy because today is a bright day. I am surprised that the sun did not rise today. I am angry because my paper was not written well. And Sheila was excited, or Ram was excited, because the teacher gave him 10% marks. So we express our emotions through language. Now the next slide, or the next function of language, is to express one's desires. What is a desire? A desire is a wish which each one of us has. Now when we have the desire and there are challenges which conflict the desires what we have something which is known as feelings. Feelings which are mixed, feelings which are happy, feelings which are sad. So if you have to express your desires, you can use language to express it. The next slide is feelings. If you see the slide here, we find that this girl is under the tree. She is suppressing her feelings. But is it right to suppress one's feelings? We have language to express our feelings. So when you are feeling sad, or when you feel sad, express it through language, either written or oral. Tell your friends that you are not feeling very happy. Tell your friend that you are not feeling very healthy. If you have a headache, tell them that you are feeling like you are not keeping well. Don't pent up your feelings, but let out your feelings through language. So what is language again? A very simple definition is the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way. So language can either be spoken or written. Now when I say spoken, it means you have to use your oral skills or the oral parts of your mouth to speak, and written is by writing down your expressions. So the language usually is human. We have other languages also, the animal language, but we are not talking about the animal language. We are talking about human language. Now there are some characteristics of human language. The first one is language is a social tool. Now what do you mean by social tool? We live in a society, human beings live in a society, so therefore it is a social tool. We use language to make use of our, or to express our feelings, desires, emotions to the society through language. So therefore we say that language is a social tool. The second characteristics of human language is it must be learned. We all learn language at different levels. The minute we are born, when the child is born, the child learns language from his or her mother. Then the father and the people at home. So first language is learnt at home, and then when the child moves on to school, the child picks up the language from the teachers and her friends at school. So therefore the second characteristic of language is it must be learned. The third characteristic is it is the relationship between sounds of a language and their meaning, which is arbitrary and dual. Now when I say the sounds of a language and their meaning, every word consists of letters, and the combination of letters makes a word, and to pronounce a word we have sounds, and therefore this sound is arbitrary and it is dual in function. The next rule is language has rules. Do you agree that language has grammar? Yes, you might have heard about it. So what is grammar? Grammar is nothing but rules of the language. We have to follow the rules to speak language in the most appropriate manner. And the last characteristic is language allows humans to be creative. Don't we be creative? We write poetry, we write songs. So with the help of language, human beings try to be creative to communicate to one another. Now, the next aspect of language is language has 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing. Now, all the 4 skills are important. You may ask me, which skill is important to learn a language? All the 4 skills are important to learn the language, and the language acquisition is also by listening, speaking, reading and writing. That is the order of language acquisition. The child learns the language or listens to the language at home. Then by listening to the language, she or he imitates the language and starts to speak. Once the child develops the skill of listening and speaking, when he moves to school, he reads and writes. So the order of language acquisition is listening and speaking, reading and writing. Now, when I use the word language, do I mean only English language? No, I mean any language. That is why you see that the 6,909 world languages all begin with listening, then speaking, then with reading and with writing. Now, if we check to see language, I have divided it into 2 aspects, that is receptive skills and productive skills. What is the meaning of receptive skills? Receptive is you receive them. For example, the listening skill. When you listen, you are only receiving the sounds said by the speaker. So therefore, it becomes listening, therefore is receptive. Similarly, the skill of reading. Reading is also considered to be a receptive skill because the writer has written down or has encoded the words and has left it in the text. You as a reader, you read the text, you decode the text to understand it. So on your part, you are only receiving information either by listening or by reading. Therefore, receptive skills are also known as passive skills. If you go on to the next one, productive skills. Now, productive skills are the other 2 skills, speaking and writing. Should you be very conscious when you speak? Yes, you have to be very conscious when you speak, because you have to encode words to make into sentences and then to prepare a text. So you have to be very conscious to speak to your friends, to your parents, to your teachers, what you speak and how you speak. Similarly, writing is also considered to be a productive skill. During an examination, can you just write an answer just for the sake of writing, or do you think and write? Because when you think and write, you are trying to be productive. You are trying to encode the words into sentences and then you write your answers. Now, I have here some differences between hearing and listening. Now, if you hear, there is a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing happens very accidentally. You don't have to be very conscious, you don't have to put your effort to hear to something which is happening. Now, sitting in a classroom, you can listen to the lecture said by your teacher, but very unconsciously you listen to the horn by the bus which is on the road. So, it is very involuntary and you do not take any effort to listen to the horn which is got from the bus on the road, moving on the road. Whereas listening is something very contrastive of the word hearing. Now, the first one is listening is focused. You have to focus your attention to what you have to listen. In a class, when the teacher explains to you, you have to focus your listening to what the teacher says. That means you have to be very conscious to what you have to listen. You have to put in all your effort and listen to what she says. So, that is why the listening is very focused, it is voluntary and it is very, very intentional. It is the opposite of hearing. The next one is listening skills. It holds as much importance and responsibility as speaking and should be pursued actively. I told you that voluntarily you have to listen to something. You cannot just let go of yourself to say that you are listening. You have to be very active in listening. If you are a good listener, you can promote good understanding of others' points. You can understand what they say. Promotes good understanding of how your own points are being perceived. You will be able to understand what you have said and in which perspective you have said. Will help make you well understood in the group. If you listen well, if your friends listen well, they will not misunderstand you. And if they do not misunderstand you, you will promote good relationship. You will have a healthy relationship. Now, you find that many people are not on talking terms. It is because they do not have good listening skills. So, if you have to have a good relationship with one another at home or at school or in your friend circle, you should first have the skill of good listening. The next one is importance of listening. Listening is the first and the foremost communication skill that we learn in our lives. It has great importance in our everyday life, such as it helps in learning. Only if you listen, you will be able to learn. It increases one's understanding. Only if you listen carefully, you will be able to understand what somebody has spoken to you. It builds a stronger relationship by creating a desire to cooperate among people because they feel acceptance and acknowledgement. It creates acceptance and openness. It reduces stress and tension. It resolves conflicts. It relieves boredom. And it can improve work quality on job because it is the most frequent type of on-the-job communication. Now, if I go back to point 6, it says it relieves boredom. Do you all listen to music when you are stressed or when you are bored? Yes, because it gives some sort of release. It releases you of some tensions and stress. So, the more you listen to a music, you feel more comfortable. Okay, the next one is active listening skills. You have to observe the non-behavioral functions of the person. You have to focus on what has been said. Don't do anything else while listening. Now, in the class, one has the habit of talking when the teacher is saying something. Don't do that. You focus on what the teacher says. Acknowledge. Acknowledge the message. Say yes or no, even if you don't agree with it. Say yes or no to what you have heard. And the last one is respect the speaker. Let the speaker finish first. You have to respect the speaker as she finishes her talk, because when you listen, you are giving her that importance and you are respecting her. So, the more you listen, the more you respect the speaker. Okay. Now you may be asking me, what type of listening queries can be answered if a question comes, what is listening? Now you have the 5 areas where you can talk on to give your answer on listening. The functions of listening, maybe you can write the functions of listening, how to be an effective listener, then barriers to effective listening, stages of the listening process, and the importance of listening, effective listening. If you talk about all these 5 aspects of listening, I think you will be able to understand what listening is and how to be a good listener. Okay. Now the second skill of language is speaking. Now we all speak. The minute we get up till the time we go to bed, we see that each one of us is talking either to our parents or to our friends or to the people on the road or to the bus driver or to the bus conductor or to any person crossing the road or to anybody in the shop. We speak, but how do we speak is very important. Now the 4 or 5 aspects what we have to keep in mind when we speak are correct pronunciation. When you speak, you have to use the correct pronunciation of words. When you speak, you shouldn't speak in a very quick manner. You have to maintain something which is known as pace. You have to pace your speed and speak to the person. When you speak, you shouldn't talk too fast, nor you should stop too often. You have to pause at particular periods. Don't be too fast, nor be too slow. And the last one is grammatically correct sentences. It is very, very essential that when we speak, we have to speak grammatically correct sentences. Okay. Now I have a slide for you here. It says, how are you? So this is a conversation between 2 friends. She asks her, how are you? And the other friend says, I'm fine, thank you. So can you see that when she says, how are you? She is posing a question. So when you speak, you have to intone your voice. Now the second friend says, I'm fine, thank you. So can you see a comma here? Yes. So when you say I'm fine, you have to pause here. You don't have to say I'm fine, thank you, but you have to say I'm fine. Wait for a while and then say thank you. Now this is another conversation between 2 friends. This is an introduction. One student is, or one friend is introducing herself to another friend. We shall see how the conversation goes. Hi, my name is Lisa. What's your name? So the second friend says, hello, I'm Tony. Nice to meet you, Tony. So she says, nice to meet you, Tony. So the second friend says, nice to meet you too, Lisa. So this is how we introduce ourselves and we speak to ourselves. We start with introducing ourselves and then we become friends and then we start speaking to ourselves and to our friends. Okay. Now what is the importance of speaking? We find that the ability to convey your information in a proper way. We have to convey our information. Whatever information we get, either through listening or through reading or through writing, we are supposed to convey the information in a very proper and appropriate manner. The second importance is you encourage people to communicate with each other. When you speak, you have to permit them, allow them and encourage them to speak to you and to others. In that way, they communicate with each other. And the last one is ability to inform, persuade and direct. So one of the important aspects of speaking is to inform, to persuade and to direct people regarding a particular information. Now if you see this picture here, we find that the teacher is talking to the students and the students are all very happy about listening to some information what he or she has given to them. So, it is very important that we speak. Okay, so I am sure you might have understood that listening and speaking are two very important skills in learning a language. Now, we shall go on to the next one, that is reading. Okay, now here we find that there is some reading happening in the classroom. Now, do you think she is reading something to her friends? Yes, she is reading something from the textbook to her friends and her friends are listening very carefully. Do we also do that in our schools? We read, or your teacher also must be doing the same thing in your school, where she reads something and you all listen. Now, here there is this mother who says, I think reading with my children is important because it gives them more exposure to literacy and to grammar. Now, I want you to read it once again. I think reading with my children is important because it gives them more exposure to literacy and to grammar. That means the more you read, the more you become educated and the more you learn grammar of that language. So, everybody should take the trouble to read something or the other in a day, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You have to take the time to read. Your teachers give you the opportunity to speak in class. Similarly, she will give you opportunities to read in class. So, take the opportunity to read in class. Now, when you read in class, you read aloud. Okay. So, we have different types of readings, that is intensive reading and extensive reading, but we shall first go to the two sub-skills of reading, that is skimming and scanning. Now, you may be wondering what is the term scanning. During the month of June, you might have gone to any bookstall to purchase books. Your teacher tells you to purchase a particular book. You don't go to the bookstall and purchase it immediately. You go through the book. How do you go through the book? You scan the book. That is, you scan it with a purpose. You scan whether the information is according to your choice. You scan if there is relevant information. Similarly, skimming. Now, skimming is another technique where you use when you read a book. Now, other than reading a textbook, you also read newspaper at home. So, when you read the newspaper, do you think that you scan or skim? You do both together. Your friend calls you up and tells you that there is a particular article in the paper. So, you take the paper in your hands and start scanning for the information. You read the headlines. So, you search for the information first on the headlines. Then you reach to page number 9 and then you get the information. Whatever your friend has given, you search for it from pages 1 to 9 and on page 9 you find the information. So, you have scanned through pages 1 to 9 to get the information. Now, you have found the information by searching on the headline. That technique is known as scanning. Once you have got the information, you read every line in the article given, or you take the trouble to read every word so that you get the information correctly. So, therefore, you employ the technique which is known as skimming. Now, skimming and scanning are two very important skills, sub-skills of reading. Now, we will go on to the different types. First of all, read aloud. Now, how do you read aloud? You read aloud anytime, any place and any way. So, anytime, make it part of your routine. Bedtime is a great time to read aloud. Now, do you read it at class also, in class also? Yes, you read it in class also aloud. Your teacher must be giving you the opportunity to read aloud. Any place. A book is portable. Take it with you in the waiting room, next to the bathtub, by the high chair. So you can read anywhere. You can sit in the classroom, you can sit in the library, you can also sit on the stairs to read any text. Anyway, kids get something from reading whether they sit still or not. Read to swimmers, shakers and upside downers, but just read aloud. So wherever you are, you can read aloud. Now, the different types of reading. There are 4 different types of reading: reading aloud, silent reading, extensive reading and intensive reading. Now, the first one is reading aloud. Now, if you see the picture here, we find that the boy is opening his mouth completely to read something from the text. Now, reading aloud is very important. When you read aloud, you have to see that you pronounce the words correctly. You have to take pace and pause into consideration, the intonation and the stress of the words when you read aloud. Now, you also have to remember that when you read aloud, there is an audience listening to you. So, you have to take into consideration that the student doesn't have a textbook or the pupil doesn't have a textbook. So, you have to read with rhythm so that they understand without the textbook also. That is the first type of reading. The second one is silent reading. Now, in silent reading, when the child reads silently, he or she, if you see the picture very carefully, you find that all the children here are reading very silently to themselves. Are they opening their mouth and reading? If you see, there is a contrast in the first picture and the second picture. The first picture, the boy opens his mouth and reads aloud. You can see that there are letters all around him. That is, everywhere everybody is able to hear what he reads. But in the second picture here, we find that the students are reading very silently to themselves. They keep their mouths closed. There is no lip movement, nor is there any lip murmur. So, silent reading is usually done for oneself. Reading aloud is done for others, but silent reading is usually done for yourself. Now, you might take an example. If your teacher asks you to read the newspaper aloud in the classroom, first you will read the text for yourself silently, because you should know where to pause, when to start and whether to pose a question or not is what you will find in the text when you read silently. And after that, you will read aloud with the correct pause, pace and intonation. So, that is the main difference between silent reading and reading aloud. Now, the third one is extensive reading. Now, the word itself means extensive, being very vast. We usually read it to improve our vocabulary. We also improve our reading skills. We also improve our comprehension when we read extensively. Now, in your schools, you might be having the supplementary text or extensive reading section in the textbook. Now, this extensive reading helps you for extensive reading. Your non-detail is to improve your vocabulary. The fourth one is intensive reading. In intensive reading, you study the grammar, you study the vocabulary, you study the text in depth. That is, in-depth analysis of the textbook or in-depth analysis of the text is done in great detail, that you don't miss out on any of the aspects of the lesson. That is known as intensive reading. So, the difference between intensive reading and extensive reading is, intensive reading is to develop one's vocabulary and the grammatical structures, whereas extensive reading is to read for pleasure. Okay? Now see, I was talking to you about the silent reading, how the children are reading very silently to themselves without disturbing one another. They are engrossed in reading. We find that nobody is opening their mouth to pronounce the words. Can you see? Everybody's lips are closed. They are not open. Now, what is extensive reading? This is something which is very important, what I want to read. Please follow with me as I read. When students read extensively, they read very easy, enjoyable books to build their reading speed and reading fluency. The aim of extensive reading is to help the student become better at the skill of reading rather than reading to study the language itself. When students are reading extensively, they read. Now, what is the meaning of read? That is, read quickly and enjoyably with adequately comprehension, so they don't need a dictionary. So, the purpose of extensive reading is to read quickly and to enjoy. And what do they mean by they don't need a dictionary? It means that you understand the meaning of a vocabulary in the context itself. In order to read quickly and fluently, that is at least 150 to 200 words per minute or a little lower for beginning students, the reading must be easy. If there is too much unknown language on the page, it creates problems which slows the natural movement of the eye and affects comprehension and turn the fluent reading into a form of study reading. So, therefore, if one has to move quickly in an extensive reading, he has to read the passage very quickly, knowing that there are unknown words. He still has to move on to understand the difficult word in the context. Extensive reading is sometimes also known as graded reading or sustained silent reading. That means all extensive reading has to be done silently. So, if you have to read a non-detail, or if you have non-detailed text, or if you have to read the supplementary textbook, you have to read it silently. So, that comes under extensive reading, and all extensive reading is done silently. Okay. I have the next one. What is intensive reading? Intensive reading is careful or in-depth reading. You read for details and extract specific information on particular topics. Do you do this when you read your textbook? Yes. The kind of reading you do when you study, you prepare a term paper or an oral report. It has several techniques or subtypes. Now, when you study, don't you read your answers very carefully, or do you just read it for the sake of reading? I am sure you don't do that. You read it very carefully, word by word, and you try to understand what you read. Now, the several types are: you scan, you skim, you explore, you study read. There is something also which is known as critical reading and analytical reading. Now, critical reading and analytical reading, they usually talk about how you have to read it, or reading between lines. There is a concept which is known as reading between lines to understand what the writer wants to tell you. Okay. Now, the purpose of reading, as you all know, is general awareness. You have general awareness, you gain knowledge, you gain information which is very vast, and you read it for enjoyment as well as you read it for leisure. The mechanics of reading, two very important aspects are mechanics of reading. You have the eye span and the fixation. See, I want you to read this. If you read word by word, chances are you will read slower than if you were to read larger sections of a text at a time. Now, I have read it aloud, so therefore, I have to read it word by word. But if you read it silently, you will check that your eye span increases, you take 2 or 3 words together to read it. Can you read it silently for me in 1 minute? Yeah. So you might have felt that you have taken 2 or 3 words together to get the meaning to you. Now, how do you increase it? You increase your eye span, which is known as a technique known as chunking. Eye span is the number of words that you read at one time, and chunking, 2 words doubles the rate, 3 words triples, and it increases comprehension. It focuses on how the words fit together to make meaning rather than on each individual word in isolation. So you might have felt that when you have read it silently, you have understood what you have read, and when you have read it individually, you did not understand the word. Now, what is fixation? Fixation is the span of your eye which you move very quickly. So therefore, we say that reading is an active process. The last skill is your writing skill. Writing skill, you have to take into consideration the simplicity, the logicality, organization, coherence and cohesion into consideration. Coherence and cohesion are very important when you write. It gives a link between one sentence and another sentence, one paragraph and another paragraph. And for this, you have to make use of transitional words. Transitional words are nothing but linking words to make connections between one sentence and another sentence. See, if you have to write a cause and effect, you have to use these words. Similarly, for contrast, for deducing, for giving examples, you can begin your answer by saying, for example, for instance, such as. If you want to give some reinforcing your answer, maybe you can say as well as, moreover. You can use these important linking words to give some sort of strength to your sentences, to give coherence and cohesion to your statements. The purpose of writing, we all know, that is to persuade, to socialize, to instruct, to explain, to recount, to inquire, to entertain and to inform. So this is the purpose of writing. Now this student is thinking, what do I write? Why am I writing this? Who am I writing for? What do I do? So she is thinking, and the different types of writing are all these, and we have a different variety of writing processes which are different stages of writing processes, and you also have the mechanics of writing which you should keep into consideration when you write. And the last quote, what Gandhi said is, good handwriting is a necessary part of education. So if we have to be educated, we have to write neatly. So when you think about language, you have to think about the 4 skills of language and its importance of each of the skills, so that you gain the language, whichever language you learn, in a better manner. Okay, thank you, students. Thank you.